do that. So welcome everybody. I'm so glad and I'm excited to I love this group, our Diversity Catalyst team. We've been doing some cool things for the last several years that I've been involved and chairing it this year. I've been privileged to work with an amazing group of people. So thank you for joining us. I'm not going to take time other than to introduce Jackie, our speaker today, and then let her share a pretty cool story. So Dr. Mosley is a professor and assistant dean for the Dale Bumpers College of Ag, Food, and Life Sciences at the University of Arkansas System. She's been recognized with national awards, including APLU's U.S. Department of Ag Excellence in College and University Teaching Award for Food and Agricultural Sciences, and recently with the Ag Innovations National Experimentation Section Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award. Oh, that is us who saw this great work she was doing, and so she's going to be presenting that project that she won the award for. Dr. Mosley has published over 55 research articles and secured over $3.7 million of federal funding from NIH, NSF, and USDA. Dr. Mosley also is a faculty member for the UA Minorities in Ag, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. Some of you will recognize the acronym MANNERS. So with that, she goes by Jackie. And thank you for joining us, Jackie. We're so glad and excited to see your presentation. Take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen and hope all that goes well. All right. Brian, give me a thumbs up if it's all good.
It looks perfect. Thanks.
Okay, great. So when Rick Rhodes asked me to talk today, I was like, what do you want me to talk about? And there's a lot to talk about with cultural competency, diversity, equity, inclusion, and how it aligns with agriculture. So I thought it was a fitting title that I feel like I do fulfill that land grant mission through the work that I'm doing. And so I just wanted to talk about that today with you all. Where I want to first start is that I like to tell people that I am in the Division of Agriculture and that I do research in an agricultural college, because most people know that I study families and communities. My background's in human development and family sciences. But I actually think the very heart and core of agriculture are families and communities. I come from a family, a 7-generation farm in Lamars, Iowa. So I'm very proud of my Iowan roots. I would say that my love language is corn. So I do love me some corn. I'm a little obsessed with corn, I have to say that. But I also want to say Blue Bunny ice cream is made in our tiny little town. So if you've ever had Blue Bunny ice cream, you're welcome. That is our claim to fame. We're the ice cream capital of the world is what we tell people. So so this is where I come from. I come from agriculture. My family still farms. All my cousins were majored in agriculture. I was the weird one who went and studied people and studied families, but I was thinking about it randomly one day that a lot of my family members went to land grant institutions. So my mom went to Iowa State, my uncle went to Iowa State and was in the agricultural college. I have cousins who went to North Dakota State, Kansas State, Colorado State, and so on. And I realized my journey was a little different. So I started at Northern Iowa, which is more of a teaching university. And I decided to do that because my parents were split, Iowa State and the Cyclones, the Hawkeyes. Or sorry, yeah. So I didn't really want to choose. So I went to the Panthers. So that was why. But I went to Northern Iowa, not a land grant. And then I went to Arizona State and did my master's in human development and family sciences. And then I went on to Texas Tech, still with the human development and family sciences, and did my dissertation there, my doctoral work. And then I went over to Penn State and did my postdoc in prevention and methodology. And honestly, I don't really know that that was the land grant. I really just didn't pay attention to these different universities. It was when I got my first, I was on an interview at the University of Arkansas. And I remember the interview question, and they asked me, so what does it mean to you to maybe work here at the land grant institution? And that's someone who probably didn't have that background knowledge. I thought, okay, real quick, what is it? And I said, well, I'm excited for the opportunity to work with families and communities in the state of Arkansas and to provide more access and opportunities with the work that I'm doing. So, I must have nailed it because I got the job, but that was really my first introduction to the land grant. And I think honestly, like, even though a lot of us say it, like we work at the land grant, do we really actually implement that work? And so that's kind of what the message is today, is that I really truly feel like I believe in the land grant. I also want to say that I think of when people hear diversity, equity, inclusion, I think of the land grant mission. So think about it. We're providing individuals the ability to shape their own destiny and the destiny of their communities and their states. And at its core, the land grant mission is helping all citizens, all careers, communities in your states thrive. And what makes the field of agriculture so wonderful is really how diverse it is, right? I mean, we study a lot of different things. I love bragging to people about all the different things we do in agriculture. So my goal is actually to continue doing that. And I do that by focusing on equity, providing equitable resources, access, opportunities for everyone that we serve in our communities and our state, especially those who are underrepresented. The focus really has been on groups that have been historically excluded in agriculture. And I just think we all know that we need to do better in all facets in fulfilling that land grant mission. And so then that brings me to then inclusion. And that's making sure we're building better relationships with and for all of our students, our faculty, our staff, the people in our communities. So I also jokingly say that I am the land grant, and probably because all of my duties in the last 14 years have fit in the land grant system. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. This slide is not to brag about me. It felt weirdly uncomfortable, but I wanted you to know the things that I've been doing through sort of my lens. And so I've been in Arkansas 14 years, again, background human development and family sciences. And I will say, entering a college of agriculture was very new for me. I'd never been in a college of ag. I do feel like in some of the colleges that exist, the human sciences and the traditional ag do seem very separated. I wish there's more collaboration. I think we need to do better in really collaborating together. So I've always kind of felt like I didn't fit in my college. It took me a long time. The research that I was doing, because I was primary appointment with the Ag Experiment Station. So that's my primary appointment, doing research. And I studied sort of issues that women were facing. I studied, diverse communities, underrepresented and marginalized communities. So it didn't really fit well with people studying animals or crops, right? And things like that. So I was a little different. I started seeking funding that really supported the work that I was doing, but also collaborating with a lot of folks who were in more traditional agri-STEM, who saw the need for, focused on people. So I found a really good partnerships in that sense. And so a lot of that led, I think, to winning that award last year, which really was a way to amplify the work that we're doing in Arkansas that I'm truly proud of. So with teaching, smaller appointment on my docket. When I got here in 2010, I noticed we had no diversity courses regarding families. So that was something I started right away. I developed 2 new courses. I really framed them around the intercultural development inventory that I'll talk about. So one of them was a multicultural families course, and the other one is an introduction to cultural competency. And it's a general elective course that all majors can sign up for. I'm really proud of that course. It's really based on all the research that I've been doing. And then a couple of years ago, I got the amazing opportunity to be the faculty mentor for Manners, and I'll talk a lot about that today. And probably my favorite thing, if anyone had to ask what I do, is mentoring. I love mentoring students at all levels and even junior faculty more recently. So mentoring is really something I'm very passionate about. So I love mentoring students. And if someone had to ask me, what was the peak of your career? It would probably be in 2022, winning the National APLU Award for USDA. And the reason I think it was so monumental for me, number one, I never expected a national award. I mean, I was applying for the regional. I thought maybe I'm pretty good in my region, right? But secondly, to be considered an agriculture educator, because the year before, I had applied and we actually got feedback about our packets, which was really helpful to understand why maybe you didn't do very well. And there was someone on that review committee who said, "You're not an agricultural scientist." And so that stung a little bit, because that was something I was already going through in the 14 years in Arkansas, is figuring out how I fit with agriculture and vice versa. And so for someone to really just say, "Yeah, you're not an ag," well, I already kind of know that. So I took that as ammunition, and I really focused on how I could really, really communicate better what I was doing, and how I do think what I do is really focused on agriculture and the work that I'm doing. And so that's why I think I'm so proud of that one. It was sort of the official, like, "Yep, I'm an agriculture scientist. Thank you very much. I finally have the validation." And then a few years ago, I then added an extension appointment. As you can see, I'm all tiers of the land grant mission. So with my extension appointment, I was starting to get asked to do more cultural competence trainings through the IDI framework that I was doing. My research was surrounding it. It was implemented in my teaching. It really is everything I've been doing. And so that made a lot of sense to kind of go out and really provide outreach and communicate what cultural competence is, right? And then in the last year, I was asked to be the assistant dean for DEI in Bumpers College, but we've removed that title, right? I jokingly say I'm the assistant dean of nothing now, or "Thou shall not be named Lord Voldemort," right? So trying to make a joke out of it. The good news is everything that I've been doing remains the same. It's just kind of not being able to call it what it is. And I think we're all facing that in so many different states right now. So when I thought about what is I going to do with my administrative appointment, I wanted to really organize it. And so I came up with the 3 goals, everything I was already doing, but it was more like I wanted to organize how to communicate to people. So the first one is advancing student success. I don't think you can find anyone who doesn't believe in advancing student success. We are all about that in the land grant. So how I do that is really through manners. And so if you don't know what manners is, please look that up. Minorities in Agricultural, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences is a national organization. There are manners chapters at almost every land grant, HBCU, Hispanic Serving Institution, community colleges, so on. And every year they come together at this national manners conference, and it is just so exciting. I can't even explain the feelings. It's amazing. And so this group is really focused on really supporting underrepresented students in ag, providing professional development opportunities, research opportunities, scholarships, so many scholarships and opportunities. It's amazing. And the fast Dr. DQ Fields, he was dean then when he asked me in 2021 to be the manners advisor. I remember one of our first meetings, he was speaking to students, and he said to everybody, you know, manners was very, very important to him. He often says manners is the reason he got his first job in agriculture. So, you know, he's been involved with it ever since, you know, the 80s, not to age him. But he said his dream was to take a large group of manners students from the University of Arkansas to the national conference and representing Arkansas. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have so much work to do. We had like 3 students at the time. So I thought that is just never going to happen. That seems like a daunting task. But within a couple of years, the pictures here are us traveling to to Atlanta last year to the national conference, a large group. And it was so cool. The happenstance, we got to sit on the plane with him at the airport. Like, he flew with us. So we didn't even plan it. So it was really cool. And through relationships that I had formed with Tyson Foods, who are located 10 miles down the road in Springdale, doing some IDI training with them, they donated and sponsored our students to travel. So they really provided scholarships and opportunities for all of our students to go to this conference. So it was phenomenal. We had this great photo to really bring it all together. And you know, we've increased membership by over 900% in just a couple of years, and we're still growing all the time. We're taking a large group in just 3 weeks to Chicago to the next National Manners Conference. We already have 4 students who received national scholarships. Everybody is presenting research. So it's just really exciting and really creating more opportunities for our students to be successful. I also wanted to do a shout out because we have a new dean in Bumpers College, Dr. Jeff Edwards. And I want to say how important leadership is, because he came immediately on, the first month on his job, and he came to visit with our Manners students. We had a social meeting a few weeks ago, and he really talked about opportunities in Bumpers College. He answered questions about networking and resumes and asking for more money when you're on the job market and things like that. And so it just shows the value of how important leadership is in supporting students in all facets. And so I just wanted to make sure I gave him a shout out, because I'm really excited to be seeing where his leadership goes for Bumpers College. Another thing that we've done, is that a great way to think about ways to help students be successful and help with networking and possible career opportunities is the last couple of years we've gone down to the Department of Agriculture in Little Rock and met with Secretary Wes Ward and all the leadership team in ag, and to learn about how, Arkansas is the number one, ag is the number one industry in Arkansas, just like for so many of the states, right? The agriculture is a huge industry. And I don't think a lot of people know that. That's something that we need to do better about, right? Is making more communities and families know how it brings a lot of money, but also a lot of jobs and opportunities. And I think it instills a lot of pride. Me just going there, I still remember the day where I'm like, wow, I'm proud to live in Arkansas. I didn't know all these things. It made me go research Iowa so that, of course, I could know some more things about Iowa and agriculture. But what was very cool is last year, I helped bring all of these groups to the Department of Ag. So we didn't want just our Manners students there, we're in the red polos, but we wanted our partner institute, 1890 Pine Bluff, and their Manners groups and their advisors to come. Arkansas Tech University, their Manners students and advisors. And through my relationship with Lighthouse, Arkansas Lighthouse Charter Schools, we've created the first and only chapter in Arkansas that is focused on junior manners. So we brought 6th to 12th graders to this day, where they could be introduced at younger ages, which we know research shows when youth are exposed to these opportunities at earlier ages, they're more likely to seek those careers, right? So this was like one of my favorite photos. And as you know, I take a lot of photos. People joke with me, but this is how you share what you're doing. And look at smiles. I mean, I love it. So this was such a great day, and I hope we continue doing this every year. So another way that we support students in the state of Arkansas is really through that Junior Manners program. We've created an annual Arkansas Lighthouse Summer Enrichment Academy, which we call ALSE. Lots of acronyms. So a couple years ago, we brought up about 100 students from a rural community just outside of Little Rock, primarily Black, Hispanic, and others, but primarily that's what their school made up. Low socioeconomic status, really no agri-STEM programming, right, or curriculum. And so really just to help them see the different potential careers that they could choose to go into if they ever wanted to. And so we followed that up a year later, and we took for a smaller cohort. So these were 7th and 8th graders, and we did a 3-day camp where we really dived in and went to every single department, met with, award-winning faculty, learned about research. And here's the key: everything had to be experiential learning, had to be hands-on, had to be fun, right? You don't want them to be bored learning about agriculture. And ag is sexy. I've heard that, and I think it's true. You just have to make it, fun. So for example, our poultry science department, they fried up chicken and got to eat it and learned all about poultry and everything beyond. And that was one of their most ranked items or things that they did. Last year, they got to do drones and learn about drones and technology and so on. So this was just 2023. We had another group come, and we graduate them the 3rd day with this white coat, right? So it's saying you're now an agri-STEM scientist, and it's inducting them into the Junior Manners program. And so they continue having these experiences back in their school where they've done a chicken and egg project, they've started gardening, and now their school is putting a freight farm on their campus to grow their own food, which they got the idea from our college. So we are now up to 100 scholars in the Junior Manners program, have grown it substantially because I think we're making ag look fun, right? It's supposed to be fun and introduce people to these opportunities. And there's a shout out to my really great partner, Mr. Wendell Scales. None of this would be possible without a partner. Like, you have to have partnerships in your communities. So it's been very important for us. And then we realized we can't just do this one time a year. We got to create year-round experiences for students and all across the state, right? Why limit ourselves and them? So we took them all to the 4-H Vine Center, which is in Little Rock, so it's closer to home for them. It's a really great space. They do a lot of different things with 4-H programs and so on. And so our students had the opportunity to get out of school, which is really fun, right? And they got to do archery, canoeing, and they learned to fish. So some of them had never done these types of outdoor things before. So that's one of my favorite photos. And it was really fun. We brought together, obviously, our junior manners, our collegiate manners at U of A, but also Arkansas Tech, really trying to think of ways that we can create more partnerships across the state. So that was all of my advancing student success. That's goal 1. Goal 2, very important, is seeking federal funding. In a lot of the states that we're in, state funding is a little bit tricky right now when you want to do these types of projects and really focus on underrepresented communities. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is funded through USDA or NSF, focus on underrepresented students, building pathway programs from K through 12 all the way to collegiate, master's, and even PhD programs in agriculture and in engineering. So there's so many opportunities and funding sources that you can really do the work that you're doing. I think sometimes we're not aware. We don't know what we don't know, right? So a lot of that has helped me be successful. Another thing is we created a Communiversity partnership. The folks here are all the people that I meet with every week. They're community partners in the state through K through 12. Crystal Bridges is another great partner. And we meet every week to talk about things. And then there's Dr. J.F. Molinay. I got to give a shout out to one of my favorite bosses. Through a lot of his support in the last couple of years, he was our interim dean, and he's also my Ag Experiment Station boss, but he's been so supportive in helping us grow these partnerships. So I wanted to give a shout out. And see, I have pictures of everybody. I love it. So take photos of things, document it. So it's data. It really does count. So I was kind of alluding to this, but so much in the work that we do, we're very siloed, right? We do it through our own university. And the whole point of our really research program is Communiversity, community university, right? And trying to expand across the state and maybe even beyond that, right? Multi-state projects, like we shouldn't be limited to our state. So we've developed partnerships with UAPB, our 1890 Institute partner, Arkansas Tech, like I mentioned, and even Arkansas State. Our goal is to help them grow a manners program, develop a manners program. And our goal is for each of those institutions to create their own junior manners chapters. So we have a lot of goals in mind, but there are a lot of barriers or really reasons why a lot of students don't choose agriculture. And one of those is they don't have a positive image of ag. And so that's one thing that our group is doing, is we're doing this through exposing them through all these different exploration field trips across the state, really networking with faculty, but also leaders at all of these institutions, opening up doors and opportunities by talking about scholarships, financial resources that they really could tap into, but they don't know about them, providing professional development and leadership skills. But the thing that I think is so crucial is providing peers that look like them, right? They can do that through junior manners, but also using our manners, our collegiate manners, to be near peers, where they are kind of close in age, and they can become really organic mentors, because they can talk about their experiences in agriculture and how, the love that they have. And so through all these ideas that I have, this is sort of my future where I'd like to move our Communiversity partnerships. So the third goal, kind of what I've been working on in Arkansas, is one of the things I'm probably the most proud of is the Division of Ag has rolled out the IDI assessment for the entire division. So 1,100 people, including our bumpers teaching faculty and staff, our Ag Experiment Station faculty and staff, and our extension faculty and staff in every county across the entire state. So I'm co-leading that with Dr. Ron Rainey, the Assistant VP for Ag. And it's just really exciting that I believe it's the only state to ever do this, really a really statewide effort to really build better relationships with their folks. We've rolled out an ouch training, which is available. It does cost money. Some of these things do cost money. So you're going to have to put some money and resources into things if you want to change the culture. But we rolled out the ouch training, which is an easy module. It's online. All of our students can access it, our faculty, staff, and we have pretty good, response rate from our folks doing it just within our own college that we're really proud of. Recruiting and networking is obviously really important across the state. Mentoring, I said, is really important. And then I thought something that I'd never thought I would want to do, and I don't agree that I'm very good at it, but event planning. I'd say I'm not an event planner, but I really have wanted to showcase diverse stories in agriculture and bringing that to our campus. So one of them we did last fall, and if you haven't heard of it, please Google Hearts of Glass. It is a fantastic film. It really follows this group who created the state-of-art hydroponic greenhouse, which I know nothing about, but it provides meaningful, inclusive employment for people with disabilities. And it's a fabulous documentary, and I really think it bridges diversity in agriculture and really can showcase what we're doing in ag. And so I highly recommend that. And then in just a few weeks, I have finally locked this down. But if you haven't heard of Gaining Ground, The Fight for Black Land, please go Google that. It is a documentary out right now. It's winning every single award. And it's a fabulous film that will probably be available for everyone in a few months. But we are showing the screening of the film in Arkansas on campus and featuring Mr. PJ Haney. He's the farmer there. He's featured along with a lot of other farmers. And it's just an amazing story. And so I think these are stories that need to be told. And to me, it's not just important for agriculture folks, students and faculty and staff and people in our state, but really for people outside of agriculture. I think there's so many things they don't know about what we do. And I think this was a really great film that can really bring in a lot more understanding to what we do. So I'm really excited about this event, but it's stressful being an event planner. I am not one at all. So, all right. So I wanted to shift a little bit in my talk. I can't ever do a talk without talking about the IDI. But I will say I'm not going to give you a whole IDI training because I know this group got trained several years ago in the intercultural development inventory. And so I'm not trying to do a training, but I think I have some useful data that I've collected over the last few years that can provide some understanding about where we are as organizations in ag. So to really remind folks that intercultural competence is really just the capacity to shift your perspective and behavior based on commonalities and differences. That's it. Shifting your perspective and behavior. And there are 3 steps to do this. Number 1, learning about who you are. So learning about your role in that land grant mission. What is your role? What community do you come from? Sort of what is your lived experience, right? Thinking about what these webinars are for, learning about lived experiences. So figuring out who you are. And honestly, a lot of us don't do that enough, learning about ourselves. Number 2 is learning about communities that are different from you, right? You don't come from that community. You don't have that identity or that lens. And think about in our various states, there's probably communities in our states that we don't know much about. So that's fairly easy, is learn about those communities, right? Learn about rural folks, rural families, first gen, and other underrepresented communities that maybe aren't your identities. So, and then the third is having experiences. So that's really crucial, is getting out into those communities, right? Interacting, having experiences with folks who maybe are different from you. So when I talk about cultural competency, people often go first to race, ethnicity, which is the primary one we do think about, that lens, that identity. Oftentimes in USDA definitions, it's really focused on race, ethnicity, but we're also talking about other identities like our age, gender, religion, nationality, disability, and so on. These are sort of the primary ones. And then there's a ton of different other secondary traits like hobbies, right? When we work with people, we have different personalities, different traits, different hobbies, things like that. So that's what I want to remind folks when we're thinking about cultural competence. It's pretty intersectional. It's a lot of different identities, not just one, right? So probably years ago, when you learned about the IDI framework, you probably saw this linear model, which is not great. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to grow and I'm going to move up and I'm going to be great, right? I really think the cultural competence is more like a pendulum, that in times of stress, you can go backwards. Or if you stop trying to grow and learn, you can go backwards. I often joke, but I think it's very true, that developing this skill is like learning a new language or learning statistics, right? If you don't use it, you probably lose it. You got to continue, utilizing those skills, or you do lose it. So I kind of wanted to briefly talk about the IDI lenses, because I think they're very fascinating. So this is where most people perceive themselves to be. I can guarantee you, everyone I've ever assessed, and I think I've assessed over 4,000 people in the last few years, most people think that they are an acceptance. They're very accepting of people who are both similar and different from them, which is great. That's great news. I don't think it's reality. It's a perceived orientation. But the whole idea is this is someone's potential. So this is where they can grow if they perceive themselves to be. So again, I'm not going into the whole IDI, but I want to stress something when it comes to intercultural competence. My favorite thing to do is ask people in groups, do you think there are group differences? So I ask people, in comparing women and men, who scores higher on the cultural competence assessment? And most people report women. Okay, women, they're more relationship oriented, they're more empathetic. Okay. And then I ask, what about age? Older versus younger adults, or who do you think scores higher in this assessment? And they're like, oh, younger for sure. They're open to more diverse ideas. They've been exposed to more diversity. Okay, it's a good hypothesis. And then I ask about, very broadly, white versus people of color. Who scores higher? And most people say people of color, they've been marginalized, they've had these experiences. What's really fun, knowing that I know this research, is there are no differences when taking this assessment. Most people score right smack dab in the middle in minimization. So even when you're talking about younger versus older, women versus men, there are no significant differences on averages. Of course, you're going to have the normal distribution. So I have seen some differences that I'll tell you about in terms of education, perhaps. So students on average score in low minimization. And this makes a lot of sense. So these are students at the U of A, and I would, yes, believe students at most universities would probably score similarly, because we are in a very minimization society. So students, number one, they're learning about who they are, right? Their identity development. It's the number one developmental task that they're going through at this age. So they're learning about themselves. Number two, they're finally on a campus. They're learning about differences a little bit, depending on the campus. But number three, they need experiences, right? They need those HIPs, those high impact practices that we hear about. They need experiential learning. They need to be doing research, study abroad, service learning. I just lost my train of thought. Things like that, the HIPs that are all so crucial. There's tons of research on that, but they don't have so much of that. They're young, so they're still getting that. Where are our faculty and staff on average? Again, minimization, but more so in the middle. These are faculty and staff from all different disciplines on my campus. And yes, I would bet that they're pretty similar in other campuses. I do have reasons we can talk about later, but so these folks are in minimization. And I want to remind people, minimization are really good hearts, folks who have really good intent, right? They have great hearts. They say things like, I believe in equality. I believe in humanity. I believe you treat everyone how you want to be treated, right? That sort of Southern statement. The only thing is that they have poor impact. So it's like they believe in something without doing anything. So the idea is I ask people, okay, so you believe in equality. What do you do to address inequality? And most are like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what to do. So this is where people stop growing. That's why so many people are in minimization. This is where we think we're supposed to be, right? And people in minimization are like, but I believe in all these things. And that is fantastic. But believing in something is much different than actually doing something. It's like believing in the land grant, but not actually ever implementing anything that helps your communities, right? And your state thrive. So that's what the challenge is. But I think that's why these types of trainings or this information is so important, because most folks in minimization, when they hear this, are like, well, I want to do better. And that is absolutely what we want to hear. Really good hearts, just poor impact. Now, I thought it'd be really fun to look at all different groups I've trained over the years. So starting on the left, I have, bumpers, faculty and staff, and I have the egg experiment station, I have extension, I got state 4-H leaders. I even have national extension leaders, a smaller group. They're a little bit higher. If you can see my cursor, they're a little bit higher, but maybe not by a lot. And my hypothesis for leaders is they're more exposed to webinars and professional development and learning about themselves, right? Then I have STEM faculty and leaders. These are out of engineering and out of biology, very STEM focused. And then I have campus leaders, deans, provosts, department heads. I even wanted to bring a non-academic. I've done a for-profit company in the state of Arkansas where they have people all over the nation. You can see that all these groups are all scoring in minimization. On average, I have never seen a group not score in minimization. So this makes a lot of sense. Now, the two bars or the two things on the right, these are when I've been invited back. And then I jokingly say, people don't invite me back. So, but you can see the arts and sciences education faculty. This was a really great big group. I did their baseline IDI probably during COVID. And a couple years later, they had me come back. And I will say the sample was smaller for the ones who redid it. But I know they provided opportunities both personally and professionally through work, through webinars, trainings, book clubs, you name it, and look at the increase among those faculty. Now, I also wanted to add my students because my courses, I utilize the IDI every semester, pre and post, to see, and every year I see more and more growth. And so this is based on this framework and those steps, right? Learning about yourself, learning about others who are different, having experiences, that I do believe the data is supporting that this framework works. So I wanted to bring up the fact that in 17, this group, I'm sure there's some turnover, did take the IDI. And this is publicly available data, by the way. I got this off the webpage, the Diversity Catalyst Committee. So, but this didn't surprise me. On average, you scored in minimization, right? I keyed you up for that. So no one should be upset. We all have more work to do, right? That's all that this is saying. So nothing really surprised me here. You have a really normal distribution. Most people are in minimization. Again, really good hearts, just need more help with figuring out the impact that they have in their land grant system. So I've kind of been alluding to this, that minimization lens. It really is the majority of people, which means it's the majority of organizations because they're made up of people. So when you hear things like, well, that's how it's always been done around here, or I just really like status quo, that is someone in minimization. But unfortunately, you are leaving out certain groups. You are forgetting certain groups, right? So we have to be thinking about ways that we're not so focused on equality, but we're focused on equity. That's where I want folks in minimization to start thinking, how do I provide equity? Who am I forgetting? Who am I not making feel included at the seat or having a seat at the table and so on? And for organizations in minimization, remember how I said there's no differences if you look just at white versus people of color. For people of color also in minimization, a lot of them say they feel a pressure to assimilate, right? Go along to get along. Don't say anything that could make you have fear of being fired for saying something. So there's a lot of issues going on with your sort of non-dominant groups in an organization. They're not speaking up for fear. And then you have folks in the dominant group, as often, who want to change and challenge others, but not so much themselves, because folks in organizations and minimization, they're very conflict avoidant because it's comfortable. Talking about similarities and status quo is comfortable for most people. And so it's trying to challenge ourselves to become comfortable being uncomfortable. Have uncomfortable conversations. That's how you grow. I think Brene Brown's the one who says you can choose growth or you can choose comfort, but you can't have both, right? And that's exactly what this is saying. The also big thing that I see with individuals and organizations in minimization is they are so focused on recruitment. I want to recruit diverse students to our campus, but they do nothing to look at retention and creating a more inclusive system that will actually make students feel comfortable. They sort of forget that because, again, they'd have to look in the mirror and work on themselves, right? So every system is so crucial, but faculty staff are one of the most crucial factors for student success and student graduation. Yet we're not willing to challenge them to think about that. If you are student facing, you are someone who needs to develop these skills, because we all have more work to do to build those better relationships. So where do I see campus leaders? And this is a smaller group, but I do tend to see a pattern. These are DEI leaders. These are just really upper campus leadership. And what I tend to see is they're moving into high minimization, almost acceptance on average. And that makes a lot of sense. They've seen the inequities, I think. They've seen the data. Oh, we have more work to do, so we better implement things. So they start talking the talk, right? Like, these things are important. The problem is they don't walk the walk. It's, again, saying, we're the land grant, we better do something, but not actually doing anything. What are you doing to recruit and then retain? What are you doing to create a more inclusive campus? Really focusing on mentoring, right? What you have to be doing something. And so that's kind of the sort of the flaw I see with acceptance. Is it's great, they're talking the talk, but they're not quite walking the walk in their organizational practices. And the biggest thing that I see, especially right now, which makes a lot of sense in a lot of the states that are dealing with, there's over 40 anti-DEI laws going around the nation. I know my friends in Nebraska are definitely feeling it, and all over. We're definitely feeling it in Arkansas. There's in acceptance, you feel like you have to protect your self-image, because you don't want to challenge your bosses. Most of us, right? Our bosses are our state legislators, our state leaders. But there are things we can do, right? We can be willing to take risks because we do actually believe in the land grant mission, which is focused on creating more opportunities and more success and more equity in our communities, right? We just may not be able to call it what it is. So that's been a new thing for us. And so I think when more organizations start becoming aware of these challenges, I would say, they can move into adaptation. And this is where I get really depressed, is because only 2% of people are in adaptation. These are sort of the change makers. They're the people who are, boots on the ground, or they're the people really like, hey, here's a policy. I want to change it because it's wrong. It's inequitable. It's not doing everyone justice. So these are the folks who are challenging the system, but they burn out. When you're trying to get everyone to see how there's inequities and no one really cares that much because they're like, status quo over here seems really comfortable, right? So these folks, they need more help, right? More people helping them do a lot of the work that they're already doing. And this is one of my favorite figures that I've seen in the years that I started doing this work, is that if you want to actually make change, you need to engage the people who are in acceptance and adaptation. You need to leverage them as champions, visibly recognize their contribution, right? Pay them more too. I'll just say that. I was just thinking out loud, but you definitely need to include people in denial and polarization. I didn't really cover all the lenses again, but here's what I say. You have to listen to everyone's concerns. Everyone has a voice at the table, right? This is an inclusive conversation, not exclusive. So everyone has a voice. You need to listen to everyone's concerns, but folks who want to do things the old way, you can't reward them for that. You can't let them bog you down. They also can't be the loudest people in the room and in the state, because unfortunately, people in the middle, those folks with really good hearts, really good intent, they're considered the fence sitters. Remember, they like comfort. So whoever is the loudest is which way they'll probably go. So for them, you've got to communicate wins, progress, right? Support them with trainings and coaching, get their input, obviously involvement, and reward them. And I've said this so many times, but if you're a leader and you have the capability, add in these different elements into their workloads, right? What are you doing to focus on underrepresented communities, either within your teaching or your research or your extension or your service? If you start implementing these things into a faculty or staff member's annual review or workload, in a few years, it'll be normal, right? But at least they're being rewarded for doing something, because that's how you sort of start changing the culture. But if they're not rewarded for doing anything, why would they do it? Because right now, most people don't have buy-in. They're not engaging in these conversations because they don't understand it. And their leadership isn't really doing a service of selling it because, again, they're afraid of their image. Here's my little caveats that I feel like I threw in there a little bit. I don't think it's the perfect recipe. It definitely depends on where you're at and your role, but these are the things that really have helped me be successful in focusing on the work that I do. Is number one, partnerships are crucial. You cannot do the work in silos. We have to find partnerships. We're also not the experts when it comes to human beings. No one really is an expert, but you can find like a fertilizer expert, a food science, a crop soil. You can find experts, but when it comes to humans, we're pretty complex. So finding partnerships across your state, multi-state, is crucial. Leadership. If you don't have leaders who believe in the work, then you're going to have an uphill battle. So I've been very lucky to have leaders who find this work important. So that's something I just hope you have leaders who believe in it, because that's really difficult. If you're not already, please go and support manners programming in your college, in your state, and even a junior manners chapter. That is creating a pathway program that is really needed. There are so many opportunities and plugins across the nation. I mean, it's a really great community that can really help people partner together across the United States. And I love that Manners is saying, you know, we're not the next generation, we're the now generation. And that is so powerful, because I keep saying, let's focus on the next generation, but we need to focus on the now generation. I think ultimately what drives my group, and I'm sure a lot of you, is we have a lot of work to do if we're going to feed the world those numbers that you hear, right, coming up before 2030, 2050. And it's like, that's daunting. So we need more people who want to do the work, who find this work valuable and important. I also have to say, collect data on everything, you know, through assessments, but also like student numbers, faculty mentoring, anything you can think of. I'm a human scientist, so I know you can collect data on everything. That can be daunting for folks like in traditional ag, but collect data on everything, because that's, as researchers, which I think is the majority of the room, that's how we understand where we are and where we could go and need to go, right? And then ultimately, the message of this talk is, don't just talk the talk. Don't just say, I believe in the land grant mission. What I want you to ultimately do is be the land grant. Go and do those things that actually provide opportunities, access, success for all the people you serve in your states. And then I love to end, I should probably start it, but I love to end when people are like, why is this important? Why is cultural competence important? And I think fundamentally, it just comes down to this. It's all about building better relationships. And I like to say, agriculture, we're in the people business. We are. Everything we do deals with people. Even if you're in a lab and you look at soil testing all day long, you still work with colleagues, people around you, peers, right? So we're in the people business. Agriculture is the people business, and we want to build better relationships within agriculture, but also across our states, so people understand what we're doing and the impact that we have on our communities. So here's my email, but obviously, hopefully you'll have access if you want to continue talking about any of these things or talk about the IDI assessment. But I'll stop sharing and then opening up the floor for questions if there are any.
I just want to say thank you. First of all, wow, my head's kind of just going 100 directions, and I imagine I see clapping and hearts in our emoji feedback. Jackie, believing is different than actually doing something. I was taking some notes here. I had a friend from Haiti, actually, that they used to say, love is an action verb. And so so put these things into action. The idea, the shifting perspective, that cultural competency. Number one, who are you? We have to know ourselves. Then two, learn about other communities so we can see the difference. And then three, have the experience coming together so that we can learn and grow and move forward. I love it. So I'm